The remote archaeological dig site in Guatemala's Petén rainforest had been uncovering Mayan artifacts for 3 months when site supervisor, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, first noticed the Jaguar tracks surrounding their excavation camp. The expedition's location, deep within the Mirador Calakmul karst forest, placed them in one of Central America's most pristine wilderness areas, where dangerous wildlife posed constant threats to the international team of researchers. Rodriguez had been leading archaeological expeditions throughout Central America for over 15 years, her expertise in Mesoamerican civilizations taking her to some of the region's most remote and dangerous locations. The 41-year-old professor from Mexico City understood jaguar behavior well enough to recognize when their presence around human camps shifted from curiosity to territorial aggression. The jaguar that had claimed the area around the dig site was unlike any specimen Rodriguez had encountered in her extensive experience with Central American wildlife. The animal's tracks measured over 5 inches across, suggesting a specimen that weighed close to 250 pounds and possessed the kind of size that made it the undisputed apex predator of the rainforest ecosystem. But it was the jaguar's systematic investigation of human activities that concerned Rodriguez most. These cats typically avoided human contact whenever possible, but this animal had been circling their camp for over 10 days. Its tracks formed an increasingly aggressive pattern around the excavation areas, suggesting it was studying rather than simply exploring. The archaeological team's isolation was nearly complete during the rainy season. Their nearest neighbors were Kekchi Maya villagers, over 50 miles away through trackless jungle, and weather conditions made helicopter operations impossible for weeks at a time. The expedition's satellite communications could reach authorities in Guatemala City, but rescue was days away even under ideal conditions. Graduate student Marcus Thompson was documenting pottery fragments when the jaguar made its first appearance during daylight hours. The massive predator emerged from the dense undergrowth just 30 yards from where the team was working, its golden coat marked with distinctive black rosettes that identified it as a fully mature male. The jaguar's size was immediately apparent to everyone at the dig site. Thompson estimated the animal's shoulder height at over 2 feet, with a massive skull and powerful jaw muscles that dwarfed those of smaller cats he had observed in Central American zoos. This was a specimen capable of crushing the skull of a bull with a single bite. Rodriguez's attempt to drive the jaguar away using noisemakers and flare guns proved ineffective against a predator that seemed to view human presence as an unacceptable intrusion requiring violent response. The animal's fearless investigation of their deterrent efforts suggested it had lost any natural wariness of humans. The jaguar's assault on the team's food storage was methodical and devastating. The animal's powerful claws and teeth made short work of reinforced containers designed to protect against smaller predators, demonstrating strength and intelligence that exceeded anything Rodriguez had witnessed in 15 years of jungle expeditions. Team photographer Sarah Kim was documenting newly discovered stone carvings when the jaguar launched its first direct attack on human targets. The 28-year-old freelancer from Seoul had extensive experience photographing wildlife, but had never encountered a predator that displayed such obvious hostile intent toward humans. The jaguar's approach to Kim was silent and calculated. The animal used the excavation's complex terrain and jungle vegetation for concealment, while positioning itself for an attack on a human who was completely focused on her work rather than potential threats. Kim's first awareness of danger came when she noticed the unnatural silence that had fallen over the normally active jungle around their camp. Her years of nature photography had taught her to recognize when an ecosystem's natural balance had been disrupted by the presence of a large predator. The jaguar's charge across 20 yards of open ground demonstrated speed and power that challenged everything Kim understood about big cat behavior. The animal's obvious intent to attack, rather than simply intimidate, represented unprecedented aggression toward humans in an archaeological setting. Kim's survival depended on her ability to reach the safety of the team's equipment shelter before the Jaguar could close the distance between them. The predator's pursuit demonstrated persistence and hunting intelligence that exceeded normal Jaguar behavior patterns. Thompson's intervention using a machete and camp stool saved Kim's life, but resulted in the Jaguar redirecting its aggression toward him. The animal's willingness to attack multiple humans simultaneously demonstrated territorial behavior that wildlife experts had never documented in Central American jaguar populations. The Jaguar's systematic stalking of the archaeological team continued for over a week, during which it demonstrated problem-solving abilities that challenged traditional jungle safety protocols. The animal learned to avoid areas where humans were alert and concentrated its hunting efforts on individuals who were isolated or distracted. Local guide Joaquin Morales was leading a supply expedition back to the dig site when the Jaguar launched its most serious assault on human targets. The 34-year-old Quechua Maya guide had lived in the rainforest his entire life, but had never encountered a jaguar that actively hunted humans rather than avoiding contact. The jaguar's attack on Morales was swift and systematic. The animal's powerful jaws were designed to crush the skulls of caimans and tapirs, and its hunting technique demonstrated the efficiency that had made jaguars one of America's most successful predators. Morales' survival training included traditional methods for dealing with jaguar encounters, but nothing had prepared him for fighting off a 250-pound predator that was actively trying to kill him. The animal's strength and agility made traditional defensive measures ineffective against a cat perfectly adapted to jungle hunting. The guide's emergency whistle brought Rodriguez and Thompson racing to his location, but the jaguar's superior knowledge of the jungle terrain allowed it to escape into the dense forest before help arrived. Morales' survival was complicated by severe lacerations and the psychological trauma of being hunted by one of the America's most efficient predators. The investigation revealed that the jaguar had been involved in multiple aggressive encounters with humans throughout the Petén region. The animal's behavior suggested it had learned to view archaeological expeditions as sources of easy prey rather than threats to be avoided. The dig site's evacuation was forced by university administrators who refused to risk additional human lives in an area where a large predator had demonstrated willingness to hunt researchers. The jaguar's territorial behavior had eliminated an archaeological project that was on the verge of major discoveries about ancient Maya civilization. The commercial tuna fishing vessel Ocean Harvest had been working the waters off Nova Scotia for 23 years when Captain Robert Mackenzie encountered the pod of pilot whales that would terrorize his crew and nearly destroy his livelihood. The 85-foot vessel was equipped for extended fishing operations in some of the North Atlantic's most productive but dangerous waters, where crew members faced constant threats from extreme weather and aggressive marine life. Mackenzie had been fishing Atlantic waters for over 25 years, his expertise in reading ocean conditions and locating productive fishing grounds making him one of the most successful independent operators in the maritime fleet. The 52-year-old captain from Halifax understood pilot whale behavior well enough to know that these normally docile cetaceans rarely interfered with human fishing operations. The pilot whale pod that began stalking the Ocean Harvest consisted of 27 animals, led by a massive bull that measured over 28 feet in length. The pod's size and coordination suggested they were operating as a highly organized social unit, but their systematic interference with human fishing activities indicated territorial behavior that had never been documented in North Atlantic pilot whale populations. Mackenzie's first indication that the whales were displaying unusual aggression came when they began destroying fishing gear rather than simply investigating his vessel. Pilot whales typically showed brief curiosity toward fishing boats before continuing their normal migration patterns, but this pod seemed determined to eliminate human operations from their territory. The whales' systematic destruction of the Ocean Harvest's tuna nets was methodical and costly. The animals used their massive bulk and intelligence to tear apart expensive gear while demonstrating their ability to eliminate human fishing operations whenever they chose to do so. First mate Danny Sullivan had been working North Atlantic fishing vessels for over 18 years when the pilot whales began their assault on the Ocean Harvest's operations. The 43-year-old veteran from Newfoundland had never encountered marine mammals that displayed such obvious hostile intent toward commercial fishing activities. The pod's coordinated attacks on the vessel's fishing equipment were systematic and terrifying. The whales used their massive heads as battering rams against steel cables, while their powerful tails struck critical gear with enough force to destroy equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sullivan's attempt to save the tuna nets brought him dangerously close to the water's edge when the pod's alpha male erupted from the surface just yards from where he worked. The whale's size and aggressive posture immediately identified it as a predator that viewed the fishing vessel as competition for marine resources. The pilot whale's investigation of Sullivan was methodical and horrifying. The animal's massive head, capable of crushing a human instantly, rose from the water, while its intelligent eyes studied the human who had entered its hunting territory. The predator's obvious intelligence was evident in its patient evaluation of this potential threat. Mackenzie's attempt to drive the whales away using the boat's engines and underwater noisemakers only seemed to increase the pod's territorial aggression. The pilot whales' willingness to maintain their assault, despite human deterrent efforts, suggested they had learned to view fishing vessels as competitors that needed to be eliminated from their domain. The whale's systematic ramming of the Ocean Harvest's hull demonstrated strength and coordination that exceeded anything Mackenzie had witnessed in his extensive career fishing whale-populated waters. The animal's massive bulk struck the vessel's steel hull with enough force to crack welds and flood compartments. Sullivan's fall overboard during the whale's assault placed him in immediate danger from predators that had already demonstrated their willingness to attack human operations. The pilot whale's massive jaws posed a deadly threat to a human swimming in their territory. The pod's investigation of Sullivan in the water was swift and coordinated. The animals circled the struggling fishermen, while their massive heads rose from the water to study prey that was completely helpless in their marine environment. Mackenzie's desperate rescue of his first mate using the vessel's life ring and retrieval winch was complicated by the whale's continued presence around the Ocean Harvest. The pilot whales seemed determined to prevent any human from escaping their territory alive. Sullivan's survival depended on the crew's ability to retrieve him from the water before the whales decided to complete their attack. The fisherman's time in the North Atlantic was limited by hypothermia that would kill him even if the pilot whales chose not to attack directly. The whales' eventual decision to release their prey came only after they had demonstrated complete dominance over human operations in their territory. Sullivan's rescue was complicated by severe hypothermia and psychological trauma from being hunted by marine predators that had shown unprecedented coordination and intelligence. The investigation revealed that pilot whale pods throughout the North Atlantic were displaying increasingly aggressive behaviors toward commercial fishing vessels. The animals were learning to associate boats with resource competition and were developing coordinated strategies for eliminating human operations from their hunting grounds. The Ocean Harvest's financial losses from destroyed equipment and lost fishing time exceeded $340,000, forcing Mackenzie to consider bankruptcy after a single encounter with marine predators. The whales' territorial behavior had escalated beyond normal cetacean patterns, making commercial fishing operations impossible in areas they claimed as their exclusive domain. The remote oil exploration camp in northern Alaska had been conducting seismic surveys for 4 months when camp supervisor Bill Harrison first noticed the grizzly bear that had taken up residence in the dense willow thickets surrounding their operation. The camp's location on Alaska's north slope placed it in one of North America's most isolated environments, where extreme weather and dangerous wildlife posed constant threats to the 40-person crew. Harrison had been supervising oil exploration operations throughout Alaska for over 18 years, his expertise in Arctic logistics and wildlife management making him invaluable to companies operating in environments where a single mistake could prove fatal. The 47-year-old supervisor from Anchorage understood grizzly bear behavior well enough to recognize when their presence around industrial camps shifted from scavenging to territorial aggression. The grizzly bear that had claimed the area around the exploration camp was unlike any specimen Harrison had encountered in his extensive northern experience. The animal's tracks measured over 12 inches across, suggesting a specimen that weighed close to 900 pounds and possessed the kind of size that made it capable of destroying equipment and killing humans with equal efficiency. But it was the bear's systematic investigation of human operations that concerned Harrison most. Grizzlies typically avoided industrial activity whenever possible, but this animal had been circling their camp for over 3 weeks. Its behavior suggested it was studying human patterns rather than simply seeking food scraps. The exploration camp's isolation was absolute during the Arctic summer. Their nearest neighbors were Inupiat hunters over 150 miles away, and weather conditions made regular aircraft operations challenging even during the brief summer season. The camp's satellite communications could reach headquarters in Prudhoe Bay, but help was hours away, even under ideal conditions. Seismic technician Carlos Mendez was deploying monitoring equipment when the grizzly made its first appearance during active work hours. The massive predator emerged from a stand of Arctic willows just 50 yards from where the crew was working, its massive bulk and aggressive posture immediately identifying it as a mature male in peak condition. The bear's size was immediately apparent to everyone at the work site. Mendez estimated the animal's shoulder height at nearly 4 feet, with a massive skull and powerful neck muscles that dwarfed those of smaller bears he had observed throughout his career in oil field operations. This was a specimen capable of flipping over vehicles and tearing through steel structures. Harrison's attempt to drive the bear away using air horns and rubber bullets proved ineffective against a predator that seemed to view human industrial activity as an unacceptable intrusion requiring violent response. The animal's fearless investigation of their deterrent efforts suggested it had lost any natural wariness of humans and machinery. The bear's assault on the camp's equipment storage was methodical and devastating. The animal's powerful claws and teeth made short work of steel containers and reinforced structures, demonstrating strength and intelligence that exceeded anything Harrison had witnessed in nearly 2 decades of Arctic operations. Equipment operator Janet Kim was conducting routine maintenance on seismic machinery when the grizzly launched its first direct attack on human targets. The 31-year-old technician from Fairbanks had extensive experience with dangerous wildlife, but had never encountered a bear that displayed such obvious hostile intent toward industrial workers. The bear's approach to Kim was deliberate and terrifying. The animal used the camp's complex layout of equipment and structures for concealment, while positioning itself for an attack on a human who was focused on technical work rather than predator awareness. Kim's first indication of immediate danger came when she noticed that the normal sounds of Arctic wildlife had been replaced by an unnatural silence that suggested the presence of a large predator. Her years of working in bear country had taught her to recognize when the environment's natural balance had been disrupted by something dangerous. The bear's charge across 30 yards of open ground demonstrated speed and power that challenged everything Kim understood about grizzly behavior. The animal's obvious intent to attack, rather than simply defend territory, represented unprecedented aggression toward humans in an industrial setting. Kim's survival depended on her ability to reach the safety of a reinforced equipment shelter before the bear could close the distance between them. The predator's pursuit demonstrated intelligence and determination that exceeded normal grizzly hunting patterns. Mendez's intervention using a high-pressure water hose saved Kim's life, but resulted in the bear redirecting its aggression toward him. The animal's willingness to attack multiple humans simultaneously demonstrated territorial behavior that wildlife experts had never documented in Arctic grizzly populations. The bear's systematic destruction of the exploration camp continued for hours after driving off the human workers. The animal's intelligence was evident in its targeting of critical equipment and communication systems, suggesting it understood the importance of eliminating human capability to operate in its territory. Security guard Mike Thompson was conducting perimeter patrols when the grizzly launched its most serious assault on human targets. The 38-year-old former military police officer had extensive training in dealing with dangerous wildlife, but had never encountered a bear that actively hunted humans rather than avoiding contact. The bear's attack on Thompson was swift and systematic. The animal's massive claws and teeth were designed to kill moose and caribou instantly, and its hunting technique demonstrated the efficiency that had made grizzlies one of North America's most successful predators. Thompson's survival training included military combat techniques, but nothing had prepared him for fighting off a 900-pound predator that possessed both intelligence and overwhelming physical advantages. The bear's strength and speed made traditional defensive measures ineffective against an animal perfectly adapted to Arctic survival. The security guard's emergency radio call brought Harrison and additional crew members racing to his location, but the bear's superior knowledge of the local terrain allowed it to retreat into the dense willow thickets before help arrived. Thompson's survival was complicated by severe lacerations and internal injuries that required immediate helicopter evacuation. The investigation revealed that the grizzly had been involved in multiple aggressive encounters with industrial operations throughout Alaska's North Slope. The animal's behavior suggested it had learned to view oil exploration activities as territorial intrusions that required violent elimination. The exploration camp's evacuation was ordered by corporate safety officials who refused to risk additional human lives in an area where a large predator had demonstrated willingness to hunt industrial workers. The bear's territorial behavior had eliminated an oil exploration project worth millions of dollars in potential revenue. The luxury eco-resort on Costa Rica's Osa Peninsula had been operating for 8 years when resort manager Patricia Gonzalez first noticed the American crocodile that had taken up residence in the mangrove estuary adjacent to their beachfront property. The resort catered to wealthy tourists seeking authentic tropical experiences, but the massive reptile that began stalking human activities was about to demonstrate that humans were no longer safe, even in supposedly controlled environments. Gonzalez had been working in Costa Rica's ecotourism industry for over 12 years, her expertise in tropical wildlife management making her invaluable to operations that brought tourists into close contact with dangerous Central American fauna. The 39-year-old manager from San Jose understood crocodile behavior well enough to recognize when their presence around human facilities shifted from opportunistic feeding to active hunting. The American crocodile that had claimed the waters around the eco-resort was unlike any specimen Gonzalez had encountered in her extensive experience with Costa Rican wildlife. The animal's estimated length of 18 feet made it one of the largest crocodiles ever documented on the Pacific coast, and its fearless investigation of human activities suggested it had lost any natural wariness of people. The resort's location on a pristine beach where the Sierpe River met the Pacific Ocean provided what should have been natural separation between human guests and dangerous wildlife. But this crocodile had demonstrated its willingness to leave the water and hunt on land when opportunities presented themselves. Gonzalez's first indication that the crocodile was displaying unusual aggression came when it began stalking resort guests during their evening beach walks rather than avoiding human contact. American crocodiles typically fled when confronted with multiple humans, but this animal seemed to be evaluating people as potential prey rather than threats to be avoided. Tourist photographer Michael Chen was capturing images of the resort's sunset ambiance when the crocodile made its first appearance during peak human activity hours. The 45-year-old businessman from San Francisco had limited experience with dangerous wildlife, but had been assured that the resort's location provided complete safety from predators. The crocodile's approach to Chen was methodical and calculated. The animal used the beach's natural features and tidal pools for concealment, while positioning itself for an attack on a human who was completely focused on photography rather than potential threats. Chen's first awareness of danger came when he noticed unusual movement in the shallow water, where he had been photographing hermit crabs and tropical fish. His urban background had not prepared him to recognize the subtle signs that indicated the presence of a large aquatic predator. The crocodile's explosive emergence from 18 inches of water demonstrated speed and power that challenged everything Chen understood about reptile behavior. The animal's obvious intent to attack, rather than simply defend territory, represented unprecedented aggression toward tourists in a resort setting. Chen's survival depended on his ability to reach higher ground before the crocodile could close the distance between them. The predator's pursuit onto dry land demonstrated territorial behavior that exceeded normal crocodile hunting patterns. Resort security guard Luis Morales' intervention using pepper spray and emergency flares saved Chen's life, but resulted in the crocodile retreating only temporarily to the nearby estuary. The animal's willingness to return repeatedly to the resort's beachfront suggested it viewed the facility as hunting territory rather than an area to be avoided. The crocodile's systematic stalking of resort guests and staff continued for over 2 weeks, during which it demonstrated intelligence and adaptability that challenged traditional tropical safety protocols. The animal learned to avoid areas where humans were alert and concentrated its hunting efforts on individuals who were isolated near the water. Resort guest Maria Rodriguez was enjoying an early morning beach walk when the crocodile launched its most serious assault on human targets. The 53-year-old retiree from Mexico City had been assured that dawn beach walks were completely safe within the resort's protected boundaries. The crocodile's attack on Rodriguez was swift and systematic. The animal's massive jaws were designed to kill large mammals instantly, and its hunting technique demonstrated the efficiency that had made American crocodiles one of Central America's most successful predators. Rodriguez's survival training was limited to basic tourist safety briefings, but nothing had prepared her for fighting off an 18-foot predator that was actively trying to kill her. The animal's strength and aquatic advantages made traditional defensive measures ineffective against a reptile perfectly adapted to tropical hunting. The guest's screams brought Gonzalez and additional staff racing to her location, but the crocodile's superior knowledge of the local aquatic environment allowed it to drag Rodriguez toward deeper water before help arrived. The woman's survival was complicated by severe lacerations and the psychological trauma of being hunted by one of America's most efficient predators. The investigation revealed that the crocodile had been involved in multiple aggressive encounters with humans throughout the Osa Peninsula region. The animal's behavior suggested it had learned to view resort guests as acceptable prey rather than threats to be avoided. The eco-resort's closure was forced by Costa Rican tourism authorities, who refused to permit operations in areas where large predators had demonstrated willingness to hunt human guests. The crocodile's territorial behavior had eliminated a tourism operation that employed over 60 local staff members and generated significant revenue for the regional economy. The remote scientific research station in Siberia's Kamchatka Peninsula had been studying volcanic activity for 5 years when station commander, Dr. Alexei Volkov, first noticed the brown bear tracks that formed an increasingly aggressive pattern around their facility. The station's location in one of Russia's most isolated wilderness areas placed it in an environment where extreme weather and dangerous wildlife posed constant threats to the international research team. Volkov had been leading scientific expeditions throughout Siberia for over 16 years, his expertise in Arctic survival and predator behavior making him invaluable to research operations in some of Earth's most challenging environments. The 44-year-old geologist from Moscow understood brown bear behavior well enough to recognize when their presence around human facilities shifted from curiosity to territorial aggression. The brown bear that had claimed the area around the research station was unlike any specimen Volkov had encountered in his extensive Siberian experience. The animal's tracks measured over 13 inches across, suggesting a specimen that weighed close to 1,000 pounds and possessed the kind of size that made it the undisputed apex predator of the Kamchatka ecosystem. But it was the bear's systematic investigation of human scientific activities that concerned Volkov most. Brown bears typically avoided research installations whenever possible, but this animal had been circling their station for over 2 weeks. Its behavior suggested it was studying human patterns rather than simply seeking food opportunities. The research station's isolation was absolute during the Siberian winter. Their nearest neighbors were indigenous, even reindeer herders over 200 miles away through trackless wilderness, and weather conditions made aircraft operations impossible for months at a time. The station's satellite communications could reach authorities in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, but rescue was weeks away even under ideal conditions. Seismologist Dr. Yuki Tanaka was deploying earthquake monitoring equipment when the brown bear made its first appearance during active research hours. The massive predator emerged from a grove of stone birch trees just 40 yards from where the team was working, its massive bulk and aggressive posture immediately identifying it as a mature male in peak condition. The bear's size was immediately apparent to everyone at the research site. Tanaka estimated the animal's shoulder height at over 4 feet, with a massive skull and powerful neck muscles that exceeded those of any bear she'd observed during her career studying volcanic regions throughout the Pacific Rim. This was a specimen capable of destroying scientific equipment and killing researchers with equal efficiency. Volkov's attempt to drive the bear away using signal flares and compressed air horns proved ineffective against a predator that seemed to view human scientific activity as an unacceptable intrusion requiring violent response. The animal's fearless investigation of their deterrent efforts suggested it had lost any natural wariness of humans and their equipment. The bear's assault on the station's instrument storage was methodical and devastating. The animal's powerful claws and teeth made short work of reinforced cases and steel mounting brackets, demonstrating strength and intelligence that exceeded anything Volkov had witnessed in 16 years of Siberian fieldwork. Research technician James Mitchell was calibrating seismic sensors when the brown bear launched its first direct attack on human targets. The 34-year-old scientist from Edinburgh had extensive experience with dangerous wildlife, but had never encountered a bear that displayed such obvious hostile intent toward research personnel. The bear's approach to Mitchell was deliberate and terrifying. The animal used the research site's complex arrangement of scientific equipment and temporary structures for concealment, while positioning itself for an attack on a human who was focused on technical work rather than predator awareness. Mitchell's first indication of immediate danger came when he noticed that the normal sounds of Siberian wildlife had been replaced by an unnatural silence that suggested the presence of a large predator. His years of working in remote locations had taught him to recognize when the environment's natural balance had been disrupted by something dangerous. The bear's charge across 25 yards of open ground demonstrated speed and power that challenged everything Mitchell understood about brown bear behavior. The animal's obvious intent to attack, rather than simply defend, territory represented unprecedented aggression toward humans in a scientific research setting. Mitchell's survival depended on his ability to reach the safety of the station's main laboratory before the bear could close the distance between them. The predator's pursuit demonstrated intelligence and determination that exceeded normal brown bear hunting patterns. Tanaka's intervention using emergency bear spray saved Mitchell's life, but resulted in the bear redirecting its aggression toward her. The animal's willingness to attack multiple humans simultaneously demonstrated territorial behavior that wildlife experts had never documented in Kamchatka brown bear populations. The bear's systematic destruction of the research station continued for hours after driving off the human scientists. The animal's intelligence was evident in its targeting of critical scientific instruments and communication equipment, suggesting it understood the importance of eliminating human capability to operate in its territory. Station meteorologist, Dr. Anna Petrov was conducting atmospheric measurements when the brown bear launched its most serious assault on human targets. The 29-year-old researcher from St. Petersburg had limited experience with dangerous wildlife, but understood immediately that their situation had become life-threatening. The bear's attack on Petrov was swift and systematic. The animal's massive claws and teeth were designed to kill large prey instantly, and its hunting technique demonstrated the efficiency that had made Kamchatka brown bears one of Siberia's most successful predators. Petrov's survival training included basic wilderness safety protocols, but nothing had prepared her for fighting off a 1,000-pound predator that possessed both intelligence and overwhelming physical advantages. The bear's strength and speed made traditional defensive measures ineffective against an animal perfectly adapted to Siberian survival. The researchers' emergency satellite beacon brought Volkov and additional team members racing to her location, but the bear's superior knowledge of the local terrain allowed it to retreat into the dense forest before help arrived. Petrov's survival was complicated by severe injuries and the psychological trauma of being hunted by one of Siberia's most efficient predators. The investigation revealed that the brown bear had been involved in multiple aggressive encounters with research operations throughout the Kamchatka Peninsula. The animal's behavior suggested it had learned to view scientific installations as territorial intrusions that required violent elimination. The research station's evacuation was ordered by Russian Academy of Sciences officials who refused to risk additional human lives in an area where a large predator had demonstrated willingness to hunt scientific personnel. The bear's territorial behavior had eliminated a volcanic research project that was providing critical data about seismic activity in one of the world's most geologically active regions. These encounters across the globe reveal a terrifying pattern of predatory aggression that is fundamentally transforming the relationship between humans and the planet's most dangerous wildlife. From the jaguars, claiming archaeological territories in Guatemala's rainforests, to the brown bears eliminating research operations in Siberia's wilderness, apex predators are abandoning behavioral patterns that once made human activities possible in their domains. The animals involved in these attacks represent a new generation of predators that view humans not as threats to be avoided, but as competitors to be eliminated or resources to be exploited. Whether driven by climate change, habitat loss, or evolutionary adaptation, these creatures are crossing boundaries that wildlife experts once considered absolute and permanent. If these shocking accounts of predator encounters left you questioning your safety in remote work environments and research locations, hit that like button and subscribe for more terrifying stories of when nature's most efficient killers decide human activities are unacceptable intrusions into their territory. Each week, we document the most harrowing predator attacks from around the world, revealing how environmental changes are creating deadly new behaviors in animals we thought we understood. Because recognizing these evolving threats could mean the difference between a successful expedition and becoming the next victim of predators that have learned to eliminate human competition with devastating efficiency. The survivors of these encounters discovered that the natural world operates by ancient laws that recognize no human authority or right to scientific exploration, leaving behind those who learned too late that we share this planet with creatures perfectly designed to reclaim their territory through violence.